All right. All right. Everyone, thank you for coming in. I'm gonna first of all, I'm doing this first time in my life, hosting anything, even a birthday party. I think I never hosted a birthday party myself. But I hope it's gonna be great because we're gonna talk today about programmatic SEO. It's a topic I've been interested about, and I've been learning mostly from Barrett actually, and that's why I invited him. And I thought it would be great for other people um, to discover this as if they want to implement the company and to deep dive and ask questions. All right, so I'm Alexander Woldarski. I'm from Lemon IO that helps companies to find engineers outside of US, mostly in Europe and Latin America. Um, Barrett, if you could introduce yourself, I met you too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Barrett O'Neill. I'm from right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I, for the last 6 years or so, have built my company, Brightline Media, and we are an SEO-focused organization. And as we noticed SEO really starting to change with no-code tools and AI over the last year and a half, we've really found programmatic SEO as something that's going to be integral to the future of search. And so we really focused hard on that. And now Matthew, who will introduce himself in a minute, we are working together to bring an affordable PSEO option to founders and small businesses.
And I'm Matthew. I'm one of the co-founders of WhaleSync. We went through Y Combinator in summer 21, and we're a no-code tool that syncs data across different apps like Airtable, Webflow, and WordPress. And the most popular use case for our tool today is using it for programmatic SEO. So people are using it to create hundreds or thousands of landing pages to rank on Google.
Okay. Great meeting you. So I've been learning about programmatic SEO for the last couple of months, and again, like mostly it was discovering through Barrett, and you've been sharing a lot of great use cases that I loved, and also wanted this to be a part of my growth too. But I don't know on what other people in the audience are level. Could you please explain, like in a basic terms, what is programmatic SEO, like you would explain, I don't know, to my mother, for example?
Yeah, for sure. So programmatic SEO is obviously a big fancy term, but really what it refers to is taking a data source and a template page and using that template to have data flow through to that from your data source and creating hundreds, thousands, millions of unique landing pages, all with their own unique SEO elements, which we can get into later in the call. What that does is it allows you to scale content in a really efficient manner from a cost perspective and an input perspective, like the actual work that it takes to get done. Think of how long it would take to write, I don't know, 10,000 unique landing pages. Like it would take your whole life basically. And so with this, you can do it in seconds if you aggregate your data properly and you build a nice template. So that's really the value of PSEO. And just to kind of give people context to this call too, is this is not a new concept. So things like TripAdvisor, Cars.com, Storage.com, these are all platforms that are leveraging programmatic SEO. They're entering data into a custom built CMS really, and it's creating pages on the other side. They're getting indexed into Google and they're ranking. What is new and what is exciting is in the past, you needed a development resource who was talented, who also knew SEO and search engine crawlers, really a team of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment to get this to work. Now with tools like WhaleSync and other no-code tools like Airtable and Webflow, we can put these together. So everyone should be very thankful to Matthew and his team. But basically, we can take data from Airtable and make beautiful pages in Webflow or WordPress that rank pretty quickly, that are hyper specific. And that's really what programmatic SEO is. It's like putting a million fishing lines in the water. You're going to catch more fish. And so that's really at its core what it is. Matthew, if you want to add anything, feel free, but that's my take on it.
Nope, I think that's really spot on. And I think to your point from before, companies like Canva, like Zapier, like there's almost no doubt that you've come across programmatic SEO pages
Yeah.
and may or may not have realized it. And like Barrett mentioned, it's now possible for startups to do it as well, which is what's super exciting to me, at least.
Yeah, I think so too. And just quickly, just to even while we're on that topic, is in SEO in general, people tend to target keywords that are too competitive, right? We look at like the keywords that are really sexy and have tons of search volume, and we put all our budget and effort and our agency on that, and then you rank 22nd and you never get any customers and you hate your agency and the marketing manager gets fired or something. And so this is a very common situation that you see. And what PSEO does is it allows you to focus on these really, really hyper specific search terms that have really, really high intent, maybe not a ton of volume. So building a one-off page for that might be tough to justify, but if you can do it in a automated way, right? So maybe there's 1,000 long tail keywords that would make sense, and maybe only 50 of them ever end up being valuable. So building out 1,000 pages manually might not be worth it. Building them out instantaneously to get those 50 that convert is well worth it. So that's really the strategy you're trying to take. And that's the situation you're trying to create with PSEO.
You've mentioned companies like TripAdvisor, Zapier. I've been digging into those companies, so that what they did is amazing. But it seems that those businesses are, programmatic SEO, made. They are, they have so many pages like Zapier. They have so many of those apps, and the combination of those apps can be each specific page, and they have like, I think 75,000 of those pages. But for the regular business, let's say, I don't know, CRM, like how do you approach and how do you make this content unique to the extent that you can create hundreds or thousands of pages?
So I think each page, first of all, needs to have dynamic content, which is the programmatic content, and then static content, which is content about your product that is not going to change. And maybe that's what convinces people to take the next step. So that could be that could be like the value prop, driving them to hit that call to action, submit that form, book that call, whatever it is. So, if in the CRM, for example, right, there might be multiple variables you could go by. So it could be CRM for industry. And I actually have a client, not on PSEO, but that is just a regular SEO client who runs a CRM for a very specific industry. Even within that industry, there's probably 40 to 50 keywords that are CRM for X, CRM for Y, software for this industry. And so if you think about all those different keywords, all those different pages, and then unique content on each of those, once you get to the third level of variable, right, like now you're in the thousands of pages. If you can add a fourth variable, which might be, I don't know, case studies or something like that, then you can start to get into the tens of thousands. So you can start to mix and match these pages, and that's how you would create, maybe 10,000 pages, even if you only had a use case for, let's say, 10 industries, but 40 different keywords, 50 different keywords, mix and match case studies, add unique content pulled in from ChatGPT. You can start to create a lot of unique pages. Each one of these is going to rank independently. So you can target the same topic. So there's like a keyword approach you can take as well.
Yeah. And I'll say it does require a little bit of creativity, right? Like for some industries, right? Some it's very straightforward. I give you an example that's obvious is like location, right? If you can be the best agency in XYZ location, right? That just applies to every city in the country or the world. But for others, a little creativity. But like Barrett mentioned, you start to combine a few different keywords and you can get thousands of pages easily. The other bit to that is that with the price of this coming down now, it actually can still make sense, even if you can only get 100 pages, let's say, right? Like, let's say for whatever reason, your use case doesn't really scale to thousands, it's 100. The ROI is still there, most likely. Whereas again, in the past, if it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, it would just be prohibitive.
Well, I think with that is, to your point, Matthew, if you do have hundreds of pages, even if you put the programmatic SEO piece to the side, being able to manage your website and the unique content on each page from an Airtable is so much easier than, like, everyone's probably been inside WordPress where the search function isn't working great. You're trying to find that one specific page. you have to log in, you have to type into the search bar, then you have to navigate to that. But it's a complete pain. So I actually think that from a managing your website standpoint, this is great. And the A/B testing is awesome. You could say, hey, we want to change up, we want to change the title tag on 50% of our pages to a new structure because we saw our competitor was having success. You can just instantaneously change that, in minutes, as opposed to going to each page and changing it. So even just the management piece from Airtable is like 1,000 times easier. I don't think I'd ever build a site another way now, just because of how easy it is to manage when it's put together.
You said managing hundreds. I'll tell you, managing 10 landing pages is a pain. We have different, we work with a lot of creators, and like we had different landing page for different creators, so we can track the direct traffic to that page. And like we had pages that had like different information that is not relevant anymore. And it's just, maybe just 10 pages. Forget about hundreds. Talk about like 5 pages, managing 5 pages on the site. Yeah. I see that there are some questions coming from the audience, but what I want to do is have another like 20 minutes of just focused talk, and then we'll accept all the questions, and you can ask about your specific questions. I see the question from the Brian. I'll let you in once we finish this section, okay? So I want to focus for a little bit about the risks, because programmatic is the word that is very opposite to what the Google is preaching about SEO. So you have to have like everything should be unique. You have to be helpful to the visitor, and the user experience should be great. And only this way you can actually win in SEO. Programmatic is something completely different. How do you let's talk about algorithm changes, or big number of low quality pages, or like lack of uniqueness. How do you address these things in programmatic SEO?
Well, so first of all, I think those are real concerns and great questions, because that's probably, I would say, the number one questions we get from prospects or just even friends that we're chatting with. But I think what Google says and what Google does are not the same thing. And then the second piece of that would be Google has sent out updates, from their community, basically saying they are pro AI content. The threshold they're using is it helpful? And so I think there's a balance to walk, which is, can you get really good at prompting to actually get useful content out of Bard, ChatGPT, whatever it is one side of it. The other side is, in SEO, there's always been a little bit of like getting certain types of content on the page because it ranks. And it's like, these algorithms they're very impressive, but like there's clear flaws. You can search things, pretty popular terms, and find very crummy websites and weird products on the first page. So it's not like it's foolproof, but the long tail nature of like the keywords that you're targeting, and this goes back to the beginning of the conversation, those are going to be less competitive. So you're going to be less likely to get knocked down because of it's not 100% unique, or it's AI generated. Like it's easier to be helpful and outrank the competition on a long tail keyword. I'm not convinced you can make an AI generated page and rank for basketball sneakers on page 1 right now. But I think if you're trying to rank for, red basketball sneakers mid height, maybe you can. And so I think it's the difference is in getting that long tail nature of those keywords. And that really is the key to SEO. And honestly, in general, like people would be a lot happier if they could put the ego to the side and say, it's not about the top keywords, it's about the ones that make me money. And that is the same for PSEO. And that's how I think you get around that. As far as the risks with Google, I think it's clear AI is here to stay. It feels like the initial hype has burned out a little bit, maybe on Twitter and stuff, at least. But I think it's clear like these tools are going to be really helpful. They're going to be a big part of everything we're doing. I think it's not accurate to assume that Google doesn't know that. And I think that it's going to come back to, maybe it used to be, can you write great content? Maybe now it's, can you prompt well enough to get good content? And I think, it's just an evolution of that process, in my mind. Those are all my opinions, by the way. I could definitely be wrong. So.
Well, I mean, again, Barrett's definitely the SEO expert in the room here, so I won't I won't step on any toes there. I'll say one extra thing to add is, at least with the way that we have used it personally, is specifically on bottom of the funnel content. So basically, like pages that are not about sort of, telling some story or explaining some high level concept, but much more about giving customers exactly what they want, which is, a page that has a product that they're ready to buy or sign up for, right? So for us, like we use programmatic SEO pages ourselves to help spread the word about WhaleSync. And those pages are specifically, you look for how to sync, let's say, Salesforce and Google Sheets. And so we'll come up on Google. And the only reason that we can, have a chance of ranking there is because we actually are providing value, because people at that point that are searching for that are not looking to like learn about Salesforce and Sheets. They're looking specifically to buy something that solves their problem.
Well, that's a good point. Is PSEO pages by nature tend to be more transactional. So the longer and more specific a search is, the amount of search volume and the intent to purchase are typically inversely correlated. Obviously not 100% of the time, but I would say the overwhelming majority of the time, if there's 10 searches, it's more likely it's closer to the dollar than if there's 10,000. Which again is why it's funny that people tend to go after the 10,000 searches, because it's like those aren't even buyers anyway. But that's a great point by Matthew, is like these pages tend to be more transactional, so there's less fluff by nature on them, because they're just more specific. So it's easier to prompt, right? It's much easier to prompt for like a very specific use case of how do I connect Google Sheets to Salesforce to auto sync leads, right? It's like that's very straightforward question, and there's really no mistake what the user's trying to get. So if you're answering that question, whether it's AI generated or not, like the answer is there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Are there any different frameworks how to plan and implement, or there's just straightforward one approach to doing that?
So from my point of view, and there's definitely more than this. I would say where I've been focused is on what you call location-based pages. So that would be that can be local, or it can be national or global. So it could be XYZ. It could be for a plumber, it might be every single best plumbing company in every single town and city in the municipality they're in. For a PPC agency, it could be best PPC agency in Arkansas, best PPC agency in Little Rock, times every state and city and town in America and the world. Then there's the integration pages, which is what we were just talking about, which is that's what Zapier really, they honestly like invented that really, and WhaleSync's doing it now too successfully. So that's basically this tool integrates with this tool, specific use case. And then the last one that I see and that we will work on is what I would refer to as aggregators, which is that's your TripAdvisor, that's your storage.com, that's your hotels.com. It's basically there's a template page and they want to display information the same, but different information that pertains to something that people can purchase, a trip to Aruba versus a trip to China or something like that. So those are the three. There is a way to do it with content, which Matthew created an awesome YouTube video actually that we should find it, Alexander, and send it out to everybody. But he shows how you can use WhaleSync and Airtable to create like programmatic blogs. So I don't know if you want to speak about that. But that's a little bit technically outside of my scope, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I'll say, and also to the question of, I'm sure there are certainly different ways to go about this. But the fundamental idea though is always the same. Like, how do you create many pages easily to rank for low volume, low competition keywords? So however you get there, I think you can probably do it a few different ways. And then, to Barrett's point, certainly I think doing lots and lots of AI written content is probably a little more risky, a little newer, a little higher complexity. So it's doable, and hopefully the YouTube video might be helpful to some. But I think the bread and butter is what Barrett was describing in terms of what most companies have done in the past to rank and do this successfully.
Where I've seen it work with blogs is on things that are like highly data driven. For example, like recipes. So like if you were writing if you had like a cookie blog, you could in theory create a database that then you could add text and then pull from the database for like if you wanted to make chocolate chip versus sugar cookies, and it was like, okay, here's the different recipes. I think that's like more structured data, and then you kind of fill in the content around it. So I think a use case like that is more straightforward. I think creating like truly informational blogs at scale with programmatic is, I think we'll get there and we'll iterate to that point. It takes a lot of creativity, and I think it's a lot of work too, frankly. Like, I don't think it's as easy to spin that up as it is location-based landing pages or integration pages.
There's a great follow-up question from Thomas. Is it PSEO still relevant as a strategy in the small niches where like there's small markets or not many keywords that you can target?
For me, it would always be like, I mean, how small? But I think, to Matthew's point earlier, like, let's say there's 3 or 4 use cases for your product. There's 10 different keywords and you have 5 or 6 different case studies. It's like right there, you can spin that up to, 100 something pages, which if you have a really niche product, I'm assuming it's maybe not that hard to rank for. So I think it's like, you could either build out all those pages by hand or you could do it this way. So I think that is the use case. And maybe when it's really niche like that, it's taking a little bit more time up front to be extremely thoughtful about the pages that will move the needle. But I certainly think for the vast majority, it probably does make sense. I'm sure there's some where it doesn't.
Yeah, I would say like it could often be a benefit to be in a small niche market for this. Like not even like,
yeah, I agree.
And then I just one other question around other sites to study aside from Zapier. After this, I can link to, we have a post on sort of an overview of programmatic SEO, and we I think call it something like 10 or 12 successful ones. So happy to link that after as well.
Yeah, and also like in small niche markets, the cost of the cost of the product are usually higher. So if it's a niche small, then you're like how to call this, your revenue probably gonna be higher per client. So it will still make sense to target pages that have like I don't know, search volume of 5 or 10, because like even if you find like 2-3 clients, it can be 2x, 3x, 5 of your revenue, current revenue.
So this is a really important point about SEO in general that you just made, which is the direct reason people would do SEO is because they want to get a new customer. The indirect reason you might do SEO is if you have very high opportunity cost of a lost deal. Let's say you have a CRM for cruise ships or something, like very hyper specific, where once you purchase, it's like that customer is not, the switching cost is painful and it's high. There is an opportunity cost to not being where you should. And so that's another way. So if you have a $100,000 per year product, losing a customer because they find somebody else or they do research on you and you're not there and it's like, oh, are they good or why can't I find them? There is a psychology to that. That's very interesting, especially with high ticket, high switching cost, high pain to switch products. We have a client, longtime client, that is in that exact, they have software for chemical manufacturing. Once you're on it, you aren't going to switch. So they like losing an ideal customer to them is arguably more painful than getting a new one is good. So that's an important point.
It's the opportunity cost. It's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I see a very specific question. We're going to address. I'll try to address all the questions. But before we do, I want to ask, like, let's go practical. Like, let's take like an example of SaaS business. Can you describe like step by step what would you do if you would want to do it for your website?
Yeah, so I think the first thing we would do is figure out, which use case makes the most sense for theirs. Is it location based? Is it industries? Is it, hey, none of those really? Like, we're just going to go on a straight up keyword approach and we're going to pick 10 keywords and go off that. Then we need to figure out the static elements on those pages, like what is never going to change about the product that gets people to purchase. Then we need to think about the dynamic elements, which are going to be all the SEO elements, everything from your title to your meta description to your headers to certain paragraph text to images potentially to case studies potentially. Those could be static or dynamic. So that's really what we would do. And then with the areas we were going to use generated text, we would A/B test prompts until we were happy with the output we were getting at some scale over a few pages. We would have to create a template that looks in line with the brand and their site that the company's happy with. I would say then we create about 100 pages and get those to index. And Matthew, I mean, I'm seeing like 2 to 3 weeks to index pages, something like that. And then once those are indexed, maybe add 300 and slowly climb that ladder. I think I would not roll out with like 100,000 pages day one, but that's like the general process. It may vary depending on the service a little bit.
So the static elements, as I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, is functional things like your benefits, your like something that will make it convert, and the dynamic things and dynamic parts of the page is something that will be unique and will make it good for the search engines, right? Like
Yes. Yeah. Yep. You don't want ChatGPT or some sort of generative text to be trying to interpret what the value to your customer. Like you're going to know that better than anybody. So that should be when they find the page. It's like that's what's going to get them to take the next step. Not as much as we love it. Not generated text about an industry or certain publications in it or whatever it is to mix up the text. So yeah, your value prop has got to be there.
Okay, and then if you could talk a little bit, and I think if this is a question to Matthew, like when you have this all the information, when you have the dynamic, you have the parts that help you convert, how are you actually implementing this into your website?
Yeah. So kind of like what Barrett mentioned, the first piece is you do need to create a dynamic template in whether it's Webflow or WordPress. And so once you have that, so it almost made me think of it as two sides. That's sort of the front end. The back end is all that data piece that Barrett was talking about. So you need to understand the use case. You need to fill in sort of the descriptions and the metadata and the AI prompts and sort of set up that database that has hundreds or eventually thousands of rows worth of data. Every row in your database is going to correspond to one page that gets created on your site. And so sort of once you've set up both of those sides, the beauty of WhaleSync is that we make it really, really easy to connect the two. And so it's literally just a matter of telling WhaleSync, this is the data that I have in my database. This is how I want it to correspond to the dynamic template. WhaleSync syncs it all up and then keeps it in sync so that as you kind of create new pages or update that data with information from that first month of results, it just constantly stays in sync and instantly updates the pages.
Okay, and what makes the page to be found by Google, like ranked by Google? Is it just that the page exists, or you need to build links to them? Like, what is the approach over that?
So when you index new pages or add new pages to a sitemap, Google's going to crawl your site every so often, and they're going to acknowledge that the pages that you have told them are there with the sitemap. If they're good and they're compliant with what they want, they'll rank. Typically with time, they'll rank higher. If you update them and take care of them, they'll rank even higher. And so there's not a ton you have to do. What I have noticed lately, and I know we were talking about this earlier, is indexing in general has gotten a little bit tougher. And I think that when you talk about Google's fighting back against AI, I'm seeing it manifest like that. It's getting a little bit tougher to index. So what can you do is like, so say you launched 900 pages and you have 250 indexed and 650 that are crawled, but no indexed, or discovered but crawled. What I've found is if you go in and you randomly select a few and you request them to be indexed manually, that sparks a crawl. And like within a couple of days, I'm noticing like another 200 will index. And then I do it again. And then within a couple of days, another 200. So it is like when I first started in SEO, like I used to manually make landing pages like this all the time. And they used to like rank the next day. So like I'd be able to make a page like and then check SEMrush the next day and it was like there. tools like SEMrush now are probably more detached from what I would call reality than ever before. And I think it's because Google's moving so fast and they have so much data to crawl that it's like there's just they're not totally in line. So when it comes to indexing, I would use Google Search Console. I would not rely on third-party tools. And that you might have to do a little bit of manual encouraging to get Google in there. But that's the toughest part of this whole thing right now. But it's a solvable problem for sure.
All right. And the question that I ask you, I remember, and I think every founder over here on the call is like itching to ask, like, how fast can you see the first results, and how fast can you see the significant results?
We guarantee number one rankings overnight. And so on, no matter how competitive. So typically with I think it depends also what else you're doing with, for your site, for your marketing, and for your SEO, definitely, or like your social price. Like I think there's other factors, but let's just say it's a cold site. I've actually seen this work significantly faster than just traditional, like, hey, let's do 4 blogs a month. So I'm seeing like within 28 days, I'm typically seeing like impressions into the thousands, and then by month 3, like I'm seeing clicks into the hundreds, and then it kind of scales from there. I mean, there was one use case that was getting millions of impressions by, what was it, like month 5 or 6, right, Matthew? And so like, I mean, that's that's probably an outlier on the that it's going really well in. But so I think there's what industry you're in and everything matters. But I think within a couple months, you're really going to see some results, which is a lot better than maybe the 6 to 8, 9 months it takes with other SEO. I think, again, that's back to long tail keywords. I think if you just targeted long tail keywords with like other styles of SEO, it would probably work a lot faster too. But this really takes advantage of that. So it works really well. To your question about backlinks, Alexander, I think Google's number one ranking factor is trust, build authority, build trust. The way that I think about authority with Google and backlinks is like, it's the same as social media followers. It's like this blockchain of votes of confidence that basically all of these can't be wrong. So like there's some level of credibility there. And so, things like that will amplify for sure and speed up. And not only that, I think where backlinks are really valuable with this is they'll help hold, right? They'll help hold those rankings over time. So that's how I think about it. But I don't know, Matthew, you've done some of these, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot faster than I typically would.
Yeah, and I think the thing to call out really is it really varies depending on many different factors. But one is how much expertise do you have to kind of apply to it. So just to give an example, if any brand new startup sets up a bunch of these programmatic SEO pages and does a decent enough job, like Barrett's saying, you might start to see some results after a month. But how far that'll take you is, I think, somewhat limited. Having an expert like Barrett who can come in and sort of assess it, update things, do all the dirty work, to make sure it actually ranks, I think, makes a big difference. And to Barrett's point, sort of that outlier that we've seen that's in the millions within a few months, it wasn't just that they put out these pages and then just like forgot about them. It's like they put out these pages, they've taken care of them, they've added to them, it goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that the pruning and the taking care of pages is like probably one of the most underrated aspects of SEO. Like if you just went back every year on January 1st and changed every blog title to include the new year, like even something as simple and silly as that, like actually makes a huge difference. So if you think about if you're actually doing it in a way that isn't maybe like a lazy way like that, but a way where you're, hey, like this has changed. Like if you wrote a blog, how to have great SEO in 2018, like it's going to look different now. So that blog's no longer relevant. So if you go back and update that, that's you showing, hey, we care about the content on our website. We care about the value our readers are getting. You're going to get rewarded for that. And so the way to think about PSEO too, and that company's done a great job, is like if you can scale that, that's where the magic and like that's where that really outsized returns are going to happen. You're basically taking a we care mentality and applying it to 10,000 pages. And it's like, that's a really powerful thing. And that's where you really see this just hit the next level. And that's why things like cars.com, like they're updating price every day, maybe, right? So it's like they're constantly updating. Their data is so fresh and good that it's like, it's a good resource. That's why they get, 30 million visitors a month. And obviously we all know what that would do to the economics of your business. So that's the way to think about it. It's a great point.
For sure. I think this will be my last question, and we'll go to the questions from people. But what are the first of all, what are the downsides? Are there any downsides? This is the first question. The first part of the question. The second part of the question is, what are potential risks to be aware of for the founder before like deciding if to go or not to go about programmatic SEO?
To me, the answer to both those questions is the same, and it would just be like a lack of strategy. Because I think Matthew's point from a few minutes ago, just, yeah, you could build a bunch of pages and like you might get a little lift, but to really get what you're hoping for, you need to have a strategy. And it's just like business, right? It's just like without a plan, it's tough to get far. Your plan's probably going to change, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be perfect to launch, but just picking 50 random keywords and making, 50,000 pages probably isn't the best strategy, but thinking through it. So not thinking through it is the biggest risk, which is a good thing because I actually think it's user risk, not like tech risk or risk with Google. I think it's like it's input risk is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm sorry, maybe just I want to. Have you seen cases where it hurt the business more than it helped the business?
I've not seen that.
Yeah, I at least on our side, I'm sure there are ways that you can that someone, if they purposely wanted to, could maybe hurt their rankings, SEO rankings. Barrett, again, you could speak to that better, but we haven't seen that with any of the clients that we've worked with. I think that just to say, kind of echo what Barrett's saying, but in a slightly different way, is programmatic SEO isn't a silver bullet, right? It's this really powerful tool, but you need to do it the right way. Otherwise, it just won't give you a lot of results. And I'd say the negative wouldn't be that you destroy your ranking or something, but just that you wasted time and money. So doing it the right way, though, it is just one of the more powerful tools, at least that I've seen, and maybe Barrett, you've seen others, but
I think it's I think when done with good strategy, SEO fundamentals, and then just the price point of, like, I think for a lot of businesses that PSEO wouldn't have made sense for because of cost.
Yeah.
Cost just prohibitiveness in the past now makes a ton of sense because you can get it at a fraction of the cost. And so, I think that would have been a risk in the past. Like, oh, if we invest $400,000 into this and it doesn't go well, but it's like, okay, well, now you can invest 20, 25. Like, it's just the risk is just significantly reduced to get this. And then the maintenance is easier too, right? We all know what, Alexander, you definitely know that the developers make their money on the maintenance, right? It's like, oh, we gotta update this. So when you're using no-code tools, that's what you're paying for, right? So it's great. You don't have to update Airtable, and they're going to handle that for you.
Great. Okay. It was a great talk. We're gonna go to question now, but before we do that, this is a recorded session that we are gonna distribute to like Twitter and newsletter. If you could tell the audience who got to be listening outside of this call where to find you, and maybe just shoot your shot and tell us what do you want to tell.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Barrett J. O'Neill. That's where I spend most of my time on social.
Awesome. And for us, whalesync.com. So whale like the animal, and then SYNC.
Cool. Thank you, guys.